Document title: For the sake of everything sacred, keep the human battleships out of this conflict. Part 1. The Galactic Concord chamber hummed with tension, a low vibration that ran through the polished obsidian floors and up the spines of every delegate present. 7 species sat in their designated arcs, each separated by tradition, history, and deep-rooted suspicion. At the center of it all, Elena Morris stood alone, the only human in the room, her hands clasped behind her back, her expression calm though her heart pounded like a war drum. She had been the Earth Alliance's liaison to the Concord for 12 years, long enough to learn every unspoken rule, every hidden bias, every flicker of contempt disguised as diplomacy. And today, that contempt was about to boil over. Reports had flooded in from the outer rim for weeks. The Cavor, a race long thought to have vanished into their mountain citadels after their defeat in the Third Spiral War, had returned, not as penitents but as conquerors. They swept through neutral systems with terrifying speed, burning trade hubs, dismantling defense grids, and enslaving entire populations. Their war chants echoed across comm channels, chilling even the most battle-hardened admirals. Yet the Concord Council remained paralyzed, not by fear but by pride. "We cannot ask them," Chancellor Vorlon said, his voice a deep rasp that carried the weight of centuries. His Zenthari form loomed over the council table, his scaled brow furrowed in disgust. To invite human warships into this conflict would be to invite chaos itself. "Chaos is already here," countered Lyra Venn, the young Lirani delegate, her silver eyes flashing. "The Cavor took Helios 9 yesterday. 10,000 civilians are gone. We have no fleet strong enough to stop them." "Then we build one," snapped Kale, the Zenthari High Admiral, his claws tapping impatiently on the arm of his seat. "We do not beg the humans for help. Their battleships are weapons of annihilation, not peacekeepers. You saw what they did at Ceres Gap. Entire fleets erased in minutes. They do not fight wars. They end them with fire." Elena remained silent. She knew better than to speak unless called upon, but inside frustration burned. She had seen the footage from Helios 9. The Cavor had used sonic lances, technology not native to their arsenal. Someone had armed them. Someone inside this very chamber might be responsible. But without proof, her words would mean nothing. Worse, they would confirm every stereotype the others held about humans. Meddlers, accusers, warmongers hiding behind reason. Meanwhile, far from the polished halls of the conquered capital, Captain Daniel Hicks stood on the bridge of the USS Marshall, his eyes fixed on a star map flickering above the command console. The ship was quiet, the usual hum of engines and chatter replaced by a tense stillness. A Priority 1 alert had just come through from deep-range sensors. A human freighter, the Orion Star, had been destroyed near the Cavor border. No survivors. No distress call. Just debris and silence. Daniel knew the Orion Star. It carried colonists, families heading to the new settlement on Eridani 3. Children, teachers, farmers, not soldiers, not spies. Just people trying to build a life. And now they were gone, vaporized by a race that had sworn never to leave their homeworld again. "Any Concord response?" he asked, his voice low. "None, sir," replied Lieutenant Maria Cole from Tactical. "They've labeled it an internal matter. They're telling all non-Cavor ships to stay clear of the sector." Daniel exhaled slowly. He had served long enough to know the unspoken rules. Humanity was tolerated, not trusted. After the Ceres Gap incident, where human ships had indeed wiped out a combined pirate armada in under 10 minutes, the galaxy had decided that human firepower was too volatile, too unpredictable. They called it excessive. Daniel called it necessary, but orders were orders. Earth Command had been clear. Maintain neutrality. Do not engage unless fired upon. Do not escalate. Do not give the Concord another reason to fear us. Still, Daniel couldn't shake the image of the Orion Star's last known coordinates. He turned to Maria. "Plot a patrol route along the border. Standard recon pattern. Nothing aggressive." Maria nodded, understanding the unspoken message. The Marshal would be close. Ready. Watching. Back at the Concord chamber, the debate raged on. Forlan slammed his fist on the table, the sound echoing like thunder. "I will not allow it. For the sake of everything sacred, keep the human battleships out of this conflict. Their presence alone would desecrate the sanctity of our ancestral oaths." Elena finally spoke, her voice steady. "Chancellor, with respect, the Cavor do not care about your oaths. They care about power, and right now they believe no one can stop them. And you believe your people can. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. I believe my people understand what it means to lose everything, she said quietly, and what it takes to protect what remains. The room fell silent. No one met her eyes. That night, Elena sent a secure message through an old contact, a retired Zenthari signals officer who owed her a favor. The message was short. Check Kavor weapon signatures. Compare to stolen human tech from the Tycho incident. She didn't expect a reply. She only hoped someone would look. Aboard the Marshal, Daniel reviewed the patrol logs. Something nagged at him. The Kavor had always used brute force tactics, rams, boarding pods, kinetic strikes. But the Orion Star's wreckage showed signs of precision plasma burns, the kind only advanced magnetic nozzles could produce. Technology humans had developed and lost years ago. He glanced at the stars through the viewport. Somewhere out there, a war was beginning, and the galaxy was choosing pride over survival. For now, the human battleships stayed out, but Daniel knew it wouldn't last. Not if his people kept dying, not if the truth stayed buried, and not if the Concord kept pretending the past could protect them from the future.
Document title, For the Sake of Everything Sacred,
Keep the Human Battleships Out of This Conflict. Part 2. Lena Morris moved through the Concord intelligence archives like a shadow, her access badge barely granting her entry to the lowest clearance tier. She had spent 3 sleepless nights digging through old mission logs, encrypted supply manifests, and declassified incident reports. Her fingers hovered over a file labeled Tycho Research Outpost, Breach Event. It was here, 7 years ago, that unknown raiders had stolen prototype shielding schematics and vanished into the void. The official report blamed pirates, but Elena had never believed that. Pirates didn't use phase shift cloaking or neural scrambler pulses. Tactics only trained military units employed. Now, with the Kavor suddenly wielding energy shields far beyond their known capabilities, the pieces were clicking into place. She cross-referenced the Tycho theft logs with recent Kavor engagement data, leaked by a Lyrani scout ship. The match was undeniable. The shield harmonics, the power modulation frequency, even the cooling cycle lag. It was all human design, modified but unmistakable. Someone had given the Kavor stolen Earth tech, and that someone had to be inside the Concord. She couldn't prove it yet, not without risking exposure, but she knew who to trust. Late that night, using a burner comm unit hidden in her quarters, she sent a coded message to Daniel Hicks. Just 3 words a Tycho tech confirmed. It was enough. If anyone could understand the implications, it was him. Aboard the USS Marshal, Daniel received the message during his midnight watch. He read it twice, then called Maria Cole to the bridge. She arrived in under a minute, her dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp despite the hour. He showed her the message without explanation. She didn't need one, Tycho, she said softly. That's where they took the MK7 resonance shields. We thought they were lost forever. They're not lost, Daniel replied. They're on Kavor warships, and that means someone inside the Concord is feeding them weapons. Maria pulled up the latest sensor logs from the Orion Star wreckage. She overlaid the plasma burn patterns with archived Tycho schematics. The alignment was near perfect. They're not just using our tech, she said. They're using it better than we did. Whoever modified it knew exactly what they were doing. Daniel's jaw tightened. This wasn't just betrayal. It was sabotage on a galactic scale. Someone was trying to make humanity look like the aggressor or worse, the hidden hand behind the Kavor invasion. Meanwhile, on the Concord homeworld, unrest simmered beneath the surface. News of the Helios 9 massacre had spread, and civilian protests erupted in the lower districts. Families demanded protection. Merchants demanded safe trade lanes. Even some younger Zenthari officers began questioning the Council's rigid stance. Among them was Terran, a junior fleet analyst who had once trained alongside Elena during a joint exercise. He found her in the archives the next morning, his voice low. They're lying to us, he said, glancing over his shoulder. Admiral Kyle ordered all Kavor engagement reports sealed. No one outside his inner circle sees the raw data. Why would he do that, Elena asked, though she already suspected the answer. Because the Kavor aren't acting alone, Terran whispered. I saw a comm intercept. They thanked their allies in the high command for the new shields. It was coded, but the signature matched Zenthari naval encryption. Elena's blood ran cold. Kyle, the same admiral who had argued most fiercely against human involvement, The same one who called human ships weapons of annihilation. He was the traitor. She knew she had to act fast. If Kale discovered her suspicions, she'd disappear like so many others who asked too many questions. She sent another message to Daniel, this time with more detail. Kale is arming them. Find proof. Stay ready. Daniel read the message and made a decision. He ordered the Marshal to drift closer to the contested zone, under the pretense of long-range sensor calibration. In truth, he wanted to be within striking distance if the Kavor moved again. He also tasked Maria with running combat simulations based on everything they knew about Kavor tactics and the new shields. What she found shocked them both. The Kavor were avoiding human-marked ships. In every recorded skirmish near human outposts, they broke off pursuit the moment a human transponder pinged. They weren't afraid of the Concorde. They were afraid of humanity, and that fear was being carefully managed by someone who didn't want the humans provoked. Kale doesn't want us in this war, Maria realized aloud. He wants the Concorde weakened, the Kavor strong, and humanity blamed when it all collapses. Daniel nodded. It was a classic false flag strategy. Let the Kavor do the dirty work, then point to human technology as proof of Earth's secret aggression. The Concorde would turn on humanity completely, and Kale would emerge as the savior who united the galaxy against a common enemy. Back on the Concorde world, Elena met with Lyra Venn in a secluded garden, far from listening devices. She told her everything, the Tycho theft, the shield match, Kale's suspicious orders. Lyra's face paled. If this is true, the entire council is compromised. Vorlan trusts Kale like a brother. Then we need proof he can't ignore, Elena said. How? Lyra asked. By letting the Kavor make their next move, Elena replied, and making sure someone sees it. The opportunity came sooner than expected. A distress call crackled across neutral channels. The scientific colony on Oris 7 was under attack. The colony housed researchers from 6 conquered species and a small team of human xenobiologists. Elena's stomach dropped. She knew what this was. Bait. Kale wanted the humans to react, and if they didn't, the colonists would die. She rushed to the council chamber, pleading for a defense fleet. Vorlan refused. We cannot risk open war. The Kavor have not declared intent against the Concorde Corps. They're killing our people, Elena shouted, her voice breaking. Then let them, Kyle said coldly from his seat. Sacrifice is the price of order. Elena looked around the room. No one would act, so she did the only thing left. She sent one final message to Daniel. Oris 7 is falling. Human lives at stake. Do what you must. She knew what she was asking. She knew the consequences. But for the sake of everything sacred, not tradition, not pride, but actual human lives, she had to try. And far away, on the bridge of the Marshal, Daniel read the message, turned to Maria, and gave the order. Set course for Oris 7. Maximum stealth. Weapons hot. The human battleships were about to enter the conflict, and nothing would ever be the same. Document title: For the sake of everything sacred, keep the human battleships out of this conflict. Part 3. The USS Marshal dropped out of warp just beyond the gravitational shadow of Oris 7's moon, its hull dark, its emissions dampened to near silence. Daniel Hicks stood rigid on the bridge, eyes locked on the main display. Below them, the colony burned. Kavor dropships swarmed the surface like angry hornets, their plasma cutters carving through research domes and evacuation tunnels. Smoke curled into the thin atmosphere, and emergency beacons blinked weakly across the ruined settlement. Life signs? Daniel asked, voice tight. Scattered, Maria Cole replied from tactical, mostly in the central biolab. They've sealed it, but the Kavor are drilling through the outer wall. How long? 20 minutes, maybe less. Daniel didn't hesitate. Activate railgun arrays. Target Kavor command ship and orbital support platforms. No warnings. No delays. The Marshal shuddered as its twin magnetic accelerators charged. A second later, 2 tungsten slugs, each the size of a shuttle, ripped through space at hypersonic speed. They struck the Kavor flagship amidships, punching clean through its hull before detonating inside the reactor chamber. The explosion lit up the sky like a second sun. Moments later, the orbital platforms followed, shredded by precision missile strikes from the Marshal's escort destroyers, the USS Carter and the USS Ellis, which had arrived in silent formation behind them. On the surface, the Kavor froze. Their comms erupted in panicked static. Within minutes, they began retreating to their remaining carriers, abandoning their ground assault. The human railguns hadn't just destroyed ships, they had shattered morale. Inside the biolab, the surviving colonists, 8 humans and 3 Lirani scientists, heard the distant thunder of collapsing metal and looked up in disbelief. When rescue shuttles from the Marshal touched down outside, they wept. But victory came at a cost. Even as Daniel ordered medevac teams deployed, a priority alert flashed on his console. It was from Earth Command. You are in direct violation of Neutrality Protocol Alpha 9. Stand down immediately. Return to designated patrol zone. Further engagement will be treated as mutiny. Daniel read the message and deleted it without comment. He knew what he'd done. He also knew he'd do it again. Meanwhile, on the Concord homeworld, chaos erupted. News of the battle spread faster than any official statement could contain it. Footage from Aura 7, captured by a Lirani news drone, showed the Marshal's railgun strike in brutal clarity. The Cavor fleet, once thought unstoppable, had been dismantled in under 3 minutes. But instead of celebration, the council chamber filled with outrage. He acted without permission, Kale thundered, slamming his fist on the table. This is exactly what we feared. Humanity brings fire wherever it goes. He saved lives, Lyra shot back, her voice trembling with anger. Including ours. At what cost? Vorlan asked, his face grim. Now the Cavor will see this as an act of war by the entire Concord. They will retaliate. They were already killing us, Elena said, stepping forward. She had been summoned to the chamber under guard. Her access revoked, her status downgraded to person of interest. But she didn't care. Daniel Hicks didn't start this war. He stopped the massacre. And if you punish him, you tell every neutral system that the Concord values pride more than people. Her words hung in the air, heavy and true, but the elders remained unmoved. Within the hour, the council issued a formal condemnation of human military action. Elena was placed under house arrest for unauthorized communication with a foreign combatant. Daniel was declared a rogue element, and the Marshal was ordered to leave Concord space immediately, or be treated as hostile. Yet not everyone agreed. In the streets, crowds gathered, not in anger but in awe. Civilians replayed the battle footage on public screens, pointing to how the human ships had carefully avoided striking the colony itself, how their shuttles had prioritized civilian shelters over military targets. Even some Xanthari soldiers whispered that perhaps humanity's strength wasn't cruelty, but control. They could have glassed the entire planet to deny it to the enemy. Instead, they shielded it. Aboard the Marshal, Daniel reviewed damage reports. Minor hull breaches, 2 engine couplings strained, but the ship was operational. Maria approached him quietly. We're being watched, she said. 3 Lirani corvettes are shadowing us at long range. Not hostile, just observing. Let them watch, Daniel replied. Maybe they'll learn something. Then a new signal blinked on the comm board. An encrypted burst, origin unknown. Maria decrypted it cautiously. The message was short, written in rough standard English. You fight for others. We fight for honor. Today, those are the same. It was signed with a Cavor clan sigil. A Cavor warlord, Maria said, stunned. He's thanking us, Daniel frowned. Or warning us, but the truth was deeper. The Cavor weren't a monolith. Some clans had followed the old ways, others had been seduced by promises of power. This warlord, likely one of the traditionalists, had seen the betrayal for what it was. And he knew who the real enemy was. Back on the Concord world, Elena sat alone in her quarters, the walls lined with silent guards. But through a hidden channel in her comm bracelet, a gift from Terran, she received a data packet. It contained partial logs from Kale's private server, smuggled out by a disillusioned aide. The logs confirmed it. Kale had authorized the transfer of Tycho shielding tech to the Cavor through a dummy corporation. He had orchestrated the entire crisis to justify a new military buildup, and to paint humanity as the ultimate threat. She couldn't send it openly, not yet. But she saved it, encrypted it, and waited. Daniel, orbiting a dead moon far from prying eyes, made his own decision. He wouldn't return to Earth, not yet. The war wasn't over, it had only just begun. And if the Concord wouldn't see the truth, then he would make them see it. For the sake of everything sacred, not dogma, not tradition, but the lives caught in the crossfire, he would stay. And he would fight, not as a conqueror, but as a shield. The human battleships were no longer outsiders. They were the line. And that line would hold. Document title, for the sake of everything sacred, Keep the human battleships out of this conflict. Part 4 Earth Command's orders arrived with finality. Daniel Hicks was to stand down, power down all weapons, and return to Alliance space within 48 hours or face charges of treason and mutiny. The message carried the personal seal of the fleet admiral, a man Daniel had once called mentor, but Daniel knew returning now would mean abandoning everything they had uncovered. It would mean letting Kale's conspiracy fester until it consumed the entire quadrant. He read the order once, then handed it to Maria without a word. She scanned it, her face unreadable, then deleted it from the system. "They're not going to believe us from afar," she said. "We have to show them." "Show them what?" Daniel asked. "That the real enemy isn't out there," she replied, pointing to the stars. "It's inside their own council." Just then, a new signal pulsed through the long-range comm array. It was weak, heavily encrypted, and bore no standard identifier. Maria ran it through the decoder, her fingers flying over the console. After a tense minute, the message resolved into plain text. It came from a Zenthari dissident cell, officers, engineers, and intelligence analysts who had grown suspicious of Kyle's sudden rise in secret fleet movements. They had proof. Not just logs, but physical evidence. A data crystal smuggled from Kale's private armory, containing schematics of his hidden dreadnoughts and coordinates to their staging area in the Xylos Nebula. More chilling was the timeline. In 72 hours, Kale planned to launch a surprise strike on Earth's outer colonies, using Cavor-style tactics to frame the attack as retaliation for Aura 7. His goal was clear: provoke humanity into a full-scale war, then rally the Concord under his banner as the only one strong enough to contain the human threat. Daniel stared at the star map as Maria overlaid the Xylos coordinates. It was a suicide run. Kale's fleet numbered over 30 capital ships, including 2 newly built siege cruisers. The Marshal and its 2 escorts barely made 3. "We can't win this," Maria said quietly. "Maybe not," Daniel replied. "But we don't have to win. We just have to survive long enough to broadcast the truth." Before he could act, another message arrived, this one from Elena, using Terran's network. She had escaped house arrest and was en route to a neutral transfer station near Lyrani space. She had the Kale logs, and she was bringing them with her. "I'm coming aboard," she wrote. "Don't leave without me." Daniel hesitated. Bringing a civilian, especially a wanted one, onto a warship heading into battle was against every regulation. But Elena wasn't just a civilian. She was the only one who could present the evidence to the Concord in a way they might actually listen. "Send a shuttle," he told Maria. "Quiet extraction. No signatures." 2 days later, Elena stepped onto the Marshal's deck, her face drawn but determined. She carried only a small case and the data crystal. Daniel met her at the airlock. No words were needed. They both knew what came next. In the war room, they laid out the full picture. Kale had not only armed the Cavor, but had been manipulating both sides from the start. He'd fed the Cavor stolen human tech to make them stronger, then used their aggression to justify his own militarization. And now, with the Concord fractured and humanity isolated, he would strike the final blow. "Vorlon still trusts him," Elena said. "If we broadcast the data without corroboration, Kale will claim it's forged. We need undeniable proof, preferably from someone inside his own ranks." As if on cue, the comm board lit up again. It was the same Cavor warlord who had contacted them after Aura 7. This time his message was longer. His clan had intercepted a supply convoy meant for Kale's hidden fleet. Among the cargo were human-made shield modulators, identical to those used on the Orion Star. More importantly, they had captured a Zenthari logistics officer who, under traditional Cavor questioning, had confessed everything. The warlord offered coordinates, fleet deployment charts, and even the activation codes for Kale's command network. "You fight for others," the message read. "We fight for honor. Today, those are the same. We join you." Daniel looked at Elena. She nodded. It was enough. They spent the next hours preparing. Maria reconfigured the ship's comms to broadcast on every major Concord frequency simultaneously. Engineers reinforced the hull, rerouted power to shields, and loaded every missile tube. The crew, knowing they might not return, wrote final messages to loved ones and sealed them in the ship's archive. Elena recorded a statement, not as a human, but as a witness. She spoke plainly without anger, laying out the facts, the theft, the lies, the planned attack on Earth. She ended with a simple plea: don't let fear blind you to betrayal. The real threat isn't humanity. It's the one among you who wants you to believe it is. As the Marshal jumped toward the Xylos Nebula, flanked now by 3 Kivor warships bearing the sigil of the honor-bound clans, Daniel stood on the bridge watching the stars blur into streaks of light. He thought of the colonists on Horus 7, of the families on the Orion Star, of the countless lives already lost to a war no one saw coming. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and officially, they didn't even exist, but they had truth on their side. And sometimes that was enough. The nebula loomed ahead, a swirling cloud of gas and shadow. Somewhere inside, Kale's armada waited, unaware that the hunters were about to become the hunted. Daniel took a deep breath. "Battle stations," he said, and the human battleship sailed into the storm. Document tittle: "For the sake of everything sacred, keep the human battleships out of this conflict. Part 5. The Xylos Nebula swallowed the USS Marshall whole, its crimson gases masking the ship's approach like a shroud. Around it, the 3 Kivor warships moved in silent formation, their jagged hulls barely visible through the ion haze. Inside the Marshal's bridge, tension hung thick as Daniel Hicks studied the tactical display. Kale's fleet was exactly where the warlord's intel said it would be. Anchored near the nebula's dense core, engines cold, weapons powered down. They were waiting. Not for an enemy from outside, but for the signal to jump to human space. "They don't know we're here," Maria whispered, her eyes locked on the sensor feed. "Not yet," Daniel replied, "but they will soon." Elena stood beside him, her hands clasped tightly. She had spent the last hours finalizing the broadcast package. Video logs, voice transcripts, ship manifests, all tied to Kale's personal encryption key. Once transmitted, there would be no denying it. But they had to survive long enough to send it. "On your mark," Daniel said. Maria nodded, activating burst transmitters in 3, 2, 1. A pulse of data erupted from the Marshal, racing through subspace on every major Concord frequency. At the same time, the Kivor ships unleashed their own signal, a war chant of betrayal, naming Kale as oathbreaker and traitor to the old ways. Across the quadrant, council chambers, fleet command centers, and public comm-nets lit up with the truth. Aboard Kale's flagship, alarms blared. He stormed onto the bridge, his face twisted in fury. "How did they find us?" he roared. Before his officers could answer, the first railgun slug tore through the hull of his lead destroyer. The Marshal had fired. Chaos erupted. Kale's fleet scrambled to power up, but they were caught mid-sleep, shields offline, weapons cold. The Kivor ship struck next, their plasma lances carving through support vessels with brutal efficiency. The Marshal, flanked by the USS Carter and USS Ellis, pushed deep into the formation, targeting command nodes and comms relays. Daniel didn't aim to destroy the entire fleet. He aimed to isolate Kale. "Focus fire on the Dreadnought's bridge tower," he ordered. "We need him alive." Maria adjusted targeting. "Shields at 60% and falling. Keep pushing." The battle raged for 23 minutes. The Marshal took hit after hit. A plasma burst breached Deck 7, knocking out secondary life support. The Carter lost its starboard engine and drifted, listing badly. The Ellis sacrificed itself to draw fire from a Kivor cruiser, exploding in a blinding flash that crippled 2 enemy ships. But they held the line. Finally, the Marshal locked onto Kale's flagship. A final railgun volley punched through its command tower. The explosion was contained, precise, just enough to disable, not destroy. "Kale's ship is dead in space," Maria reported. "No weapons, no engines. They're signaling surrender." "Don't accept it," Daniel said. "Board them. Secure Kale, and recover his command logs." Within the hour, Marines in vacuum suits breached the Dreadnought's hull. They found Kale in his private chamber, trying to purge his systems. He resisted, but not for long. Bound and silent, he was brought aboard the Marshal, his face a mask of disbelief. Back on the Concord homeworld, Vorlon watched the broadcast in stunned silence. The evidence was overwhelming. His trusted admiral, his brother-in-arms, had betrayed them all. Shame burned in his chest like fire. Without a word, he activated the emergency council channel. "This is Chancellor Vorlon," he announced, his voice heavy. "High Admiral Kale is relieved of all duties. His fleet is to stand down immediately. Any vessel that resists will be treated as hostile." Then he did something no Xanthari leader had done in centuries. He bowed his head on live feed and spoke directly to Elena's recorded image. "To the people of Earth and to Captain Hicks. We were wrong. Forgive our blindness. The message spread like wildfire. Across the quadrant, ships that had once eyed human vessels with suspicion now hailed them with respect. Even former enemies sent messages of gratitude. The war was over before it truly began. In the days that followed, Daniel received new orders, not from Earth Command, but from a joint conquered Earth tribunal. He was to stand trial for violating neutrality, but the tone was different. It wasn't punishment they sought. It was understanding. His court-martial lasted 3 days. He spoke plainly, without defense, only truth. He had broken orders to save lives. He had risked war to prevent a greater one. When the verdict came, it was unanimous. Not guilty. Elena was named the first human ambassador to the newly reformed Galactic Assembly. Her first act was to propose a joint defense charter, one that included human battleships not as weapons, but as guardians. And when the question arose of who should command the new unified fleet, the answer came from every species in every language, but with one voice. Daniel Hicks stood on the bridge of the Marshall one last time before handing it over to a new captain. Maria would stay with him, now promoted to fleet operations lead. Helena visited before departure, handing him a small data chip. Forlin asked me to give you this, she said. It contained the original council recording, the one where he had said, "For the sake of everything sacred, keep the human battleships out of this conflict." Daniel smiled faintly. He was right. We shouldn't be in every fight. But when the universe needs us, Elena said, you'll be there. He looked out at the stars, quiet now, no longer divided by fear. Humanity hadn't won the war through force alone. They had won it by showing that strength could serve mercy, that power could protect rather than dominate. And so, the warning that once sought to exclude them became their solemn vow. For the sake of everything sacred, not tradition, not pride, but life itself, they would come. Not for conquest, not for glory, but because someone had to. And when they did, the galaxy would no longer tremble. It would hope.